Hi guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you today? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so. Oh, you got the fireworks today. And if you get anything from my work, a connect, a dot, an epiphany, a mind blow moment, an explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description. And if you have an inkling that sharing is just not enough and you want an actual exchange, this is gem plates. I am very much debating on doing the sides to look like a geode, but this is a bunch of gems, nice and expensive ones. It's like a coaster. And then I just did one of these little cup holders, or yeah, different types of pyramids. I'm working on those that are energy absorption. Custom color I made. Business card holders, butterflies, scullies, all kinds of good stuff. So go check out my website, AllyKatzkreations211.com. I just started mass producing these little gem guys, and I'm still making some of these. So these will be up when I make a little bit more on my website. But yeah, check it out, AllyKatzkreations211.com is where you can see my portfolio. If you see anything that you like, email me. I make deals. And I'm not expensive compared to other people who make stuff of this nature. They charge an exponential a lot more than I do. My purpose in doing my artwork is to have healing and give the healing energy out. I still need to recover what I put into my work, but I'm not there to, I would say other words, but I'm going to be kind. Beyond Good and Evil. So the last time it was more on Germany, the fatherland. I thought I was going to get more out of that, even though I read this a very long time ago. You forget every, section. You don't remember everything. Um, and I found some chicken winter dinners here that I think we will pull a lot out of. Um, I'm also on TikTok. I know a lot of I listen, I did something out of my comfort zone and I want to put good messages out there. I did an oracle reading this morning. Spirit, myself, my higher selves were try this to get some messages out, and it worked. So go check me out on TikTok. I try to keep them as like up to 5 minutes as much as possible. Sometimes shorter, sometimes a little longer, but try to keep the message condensed. This I cannot keep condensed. So if you're on there and you want to find me, AllyKat211 is where I'm at, and I have a picture of me there so you can identify. I'm very easy to identify, by the way. So I'm going to read once again for those of you who are new to my channel. I read sections and I jump around to what is relevant, especially with the here and now. The concept of beyond good and evil. If anybody watched Yellowstone, it appears in season 3. I forgot, Beth, I think her name is, talks about this book. I'm like, you see, boyfriend Viking, hi. I read this on my channel. Maybe you should pay attention to it a little bit more often. Corruption as the expression of a threatening anarchy among the instincts and of the fact that the foundation of the effects, which is called life, has been shaken. Corruption is something totally different depending on the organism in which it appears. I love where this is going, by the way. When, for example, an aristocracy like that of France at the beginning of the revolution throws away its privileges with a sublime disgust and sacrifices itself to the extravagance of its own moral feelings. That is corruption. It was really only the last act of the centuries-old corruption which had led them to surrender step by step their governmental prerogatives, demoting themselves to a mere function of the monarchy. Finally, even to a mere ornament and showpiece. The essential characteristic of a good and healthy aristocracy, however, is that it experiences itself not as a function, whether of the monarchy or a commonwealth, but as their meaning and highest jurisdiction and justification, that it therefore accepts with a good conscience the sacrifice of untold human beings, who, for its sake, must be reduced and lowered to incomplete human beings, to slaves, to instruments. Their fundamental faith simply has to be that society must not exist for society's sake, but only as a foundation and scaffolding on which a choice type of being is able to rise itself to a higher task and to a higher state of being, comparatively to those sun-seeking vines of Java they call Sippo Matador, that so long and so often clasp an oak tree with their tendrils until eventually high above it, but supported by it, they can unfold their crowns in the open light and display their happiness. To the Americans, hi to 2001, 9/11. Boom. We could compare it to that. As we had the government pretty much put in place Patriot Acts and acts that have nothing to do with patriotism and everything to do with our enslavement and letting go of our pieces of liberty and freedom and what the Articles of Confederation was really about. It totally went against everything in human nature. All for a facade. It's a facade. If you actually read what those documents lied within, the wording within, they told you pleasantries, we're going to keep you safe, terrorism, we're going to go against people that really didn't do anything about us. And then how we're looking at what actually happened. I was in the city, New York City, for 9/11. I was in my freshman year of college, and I watched that day unfold, and I watched those buildings drop. I didn't see planes. Some people did. Regardless of what you feel, you saw that day, there's a lot of things that just does not add up. Like, how does passports fly on the floor unscorched? How did Building 7 drop? How? These are just crazy questions that a lot of our Patriot community asks. But I asked a simple-minded person to really take in where things were that day and the things and the repercussions that have happened afterwards that stripped us away of what we want, that what they deemed to make us feel safe was really to rip us away of our freedoms and our way of living, to put us in a state of fear. Now look to other countries and see how other countries are doing it to their own people, because we've been enslaved. Now is how we are now coming to light of the truths that have shown on us to say, okay, wow, that was really wrong. And what they did was really wrong. And the money laundering and the insurance policies that really aren't ever spoken about, but yet are very important to understand that it had a bigger role to play. Greed, in essence, is a sin, supposedly. This was a course correction, even though it was a false flag. It was course correction because it opened up many people in that era, in that time, to wait a second, this a few things are not adding up. Innumerable lives were lost and then continuously still being lost. Just because someone didn't die that day didn't mean they didn't get the C word or an illness from being down there. And people are still to this day suffering because of that day over greed. We still have to take our shoes off when we go to an airport. We still have to do certain things that are immeasurable. For what? And yet we're letting all these people through the border. If you want to come into our country, do it legally. Just like if I went into your country to want to live, I have to go through a process of vetting and having money and financial backing. I have to have something contribute to that society. You can't just move to another country. There's a huge amount of processing that goes into that. I can visit with a visa to most places. Why is it that people can just stroll in? And yet, if you're in another country, you have to have specific documentation. You have to go through a process to get into a country, even if it visits. It's a little bizarre to me how we've been indoctrinated in these things. And Nietzsche is pointing out a lot of this. Refraining mutually from injury, violence, and exploitation, and placing one's will on par with that of someone else's. This may become, in a certain rough sense, good manners among individuals if the appropriate conditions are present, namely, if these men are actually similar in strength and value, standards, and belonging together in one body. But as soon as this principle is extended and possibly even accepted as the fundamental principle of society, it immediately proves to be what it really is, a will to the denial of life, a principle of disintegration and decay. Here we must beware of superficiality and get to the bottom of the matter, resisting all sentimental weakness. Life itself is essentially appropriation, injury, overpowering of what is alien and weaker, suppression, hardness, imposition of one's own forms, incorporation, and at least at its mildest exploitation. By why should one always use those words in which a slanderous intent has been imprinted for ages? What has the United States done to other countries time and time again in falsifying why the real determined reason is to go into other countries and making us look like we are a superpower when we're absolutely not. I have pride for my country. I don't have pride for what my government does, and nor do I vote these morons in. And that's the likeness of so many people. Even the body within which individuals treat each other as equals, as suggested before, and this happens in every healthy aristocracy, if it is a living and not a dying body, has to do to other bodies what the individuals within it refrain from doing to each other. It will have to be an incarnate will to power. It will strive to grow, spread, seize, become predominant, not from any morality or immorality, but because it is living and because life is simply will to power. But there is no point on which the ordinary consciousness of Europeans resist instruction as on this. Everywhere people are now raving, even under scientific disguises, about coming conditions of society in which the exploitative aspect will be removed, which sounds to me as if they promise to invent a way of life that would dispense with all organic functions. And here we are, AI. Exploitation does not belong to a corrupt or an imperfect and primitive society. It belongs to the essence of what lives. As a basic organic function, it is a consequence of the will to power, which is over all the will of life. There's so much to say there. If this should be an innovation as a theory, as a reality, it is the primordial fact of all history. People ought to be honest with themselves, at least that far. Wandering through the many subtler and coarser moralities, which have so far been prevalent on earth, or still are prevalent, I found that certain features reoccurred regularly together and were closely associated until I finally discovered two basic types and one basic difference. There are master morality and slave morality. I add immediately that in all the higher and more mixed cultures, there also appears attempts at meditation between these two moralities, and yet more often the interpenetration and mutual understanding of both, and at times they occur directly alongside each other, even in the same human being within a single soul. The moral discrimination of values have originated either among a ruling group whose consciousness of its difference from the ruled group was accompanied by delight, or among the ruled, the slaves and dependents of every degree. In the first case, when the ruling group determines what is good, the exalted, proud states of the soul are experienced as conferring distinction and determining the order of rank. This right here is our society. We have people who feel that they are above everybody else. They put themselves on podiums and they overpower others, as others just march willingly to the beat of that master's drum, without questioning inner will, without going into the heart space and aligning. I take to my own talk. I know many people do. But this is bringing and shedding to light how, as a society, how we should not, as we're moving forward, follow the dictates of history. We classify people, we create leaders, but if the leaders aren't having everybody in mind, that's everybody, not just some. It's where we go one, we go all. It's not just who you choose to come with you. It's everybody, good, bad, and indifferent. When you can keep that in your mind, all cultures, races, and creeds, different languages, different places around the planet, hybrids, we got to come into an understanding that this is where we're shifting. This is the collective that we are shifting with, and that we need to make amends with whatever it is within us that has a hatred or a negative connotation towards others. We need to have an equal playing field. That means there is nobody above you or nobody below you. You're as equal to everybody else. And we all say that, but do you feel it? Do you act on it? Do you promote it? Do you emote it? this is the problem with politics. We choose people, and then all of a sudden there's a grad they take in more money. They're under the table dealing and wheeling shit that we didn't vote them in for. We didn't put them there for. We talk about certain people as if they are above us and that they are the only ones that inhibit the powers of time travel or understanding the higher realms. I'm sorry, there is nobody that has, unless you're already dead in spirit, because this is just a dream, that you're working in unity consciousness anyway in your higher selves, and there is nobody above you or below you. There's different densities. Your oversoul chose you to represent itself. All the aspects that make up your oversoul, you, as a beautiful soul that you are, chose to live this life as a representation of them. What a freaking blessing. So why are you throwing away your power? And it's not power over others. It's power of self. It's standing in your empowerment to understanding how powerful you are, and how you use that power is what's most important. This section right here is major. He is pointing out, and remember, he's late 1800s, early 1900s, and in his writing and his understanding of society. So when he talks about the European, that's just what his viewpoint is. That's what he's seeing. That's what's being expressed. But if you can shift and mold his words to where we are right now, wherever you are in the world, and apply it to your governmental systems, the corporational systems, and just society in general, we do rank. We do class people. Oh, there's the middle class and the upper class and the elite and the impoverished. Why does that even exist? We're seeing it today more than ever. And we need to be aware of where our minds are in the fold. I don't need $1 million to feel blessed and successful. I just need to have enough to be content to eat and function in this matrix. I think just about everybody else feels very similar to my, yeah, we would love to go on vacations and do nice things for ourselves. But for overall general populace of human beings, we just want our needs met with a little bit of extras. That's not much to ask for. And yet we're clawing our way in society. We're watching society and all the elite who we keep seeing be voted in, not do as we are asking them to do. Mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. In the first case, when the ruling group determines what is good, the exalted, proud states of the soul are experienced as conferring distinction and determining the order of rank. The noble human being separates from himself those in whom the opposite of such exalted, proud states finds expression. He despises them. It should not be noted immediately that in this first type of morality, the opposite of good and bad means approximately the same as noble and contemptible. The opposition of good and evil has a different origin. One feels contempt for the cowardly, the anxious, the petty, whose intent on narrow utility, also for the suspicious with their unfree glances, those who humble themselves, the dog-like people who allow themselves to be maltreated, the begging flatterers, above all the liars. It is part of the fundamental faith of all aristocrats that the common people lie. With truthful ones, thus the nobility of ancient Greece referred to itself. It is obvious that moral designations were everywhere, first applied to the human beings and only later derivatively to actions. Therefore, it is a gross mistake when historians of morality start from such questions as, why was the compassionate act praised? Do you really know what's in those acts? The noble type of man experiences itself as determining values. It does not need approval. It judge. What is harmful to me is harmful in itself. It knows itself to be that which first accords honor to things. It is value creating. Everything it knows as part of itself, it honors. Such a morality is self-glorification. In the foreground, there is the feeling of fullness, of the power that seeks to overflow, the happiness of high tension, the consciousness of wealth that would give and bestow the noble human being. Two, helps the unfortunate, but not, or almost not, from pity, but prompted more from an urge begotten by access of power. The noble human being honors himself as one who is powerful, also as one who has power over himself, who knows how to speak and be silent, who delights in being served and hard with himself, and respects all severity and hardness. A hard heart, wanton, put into my breast, says an old Scandinavian saga. Wotan is Odin. A fitting poetic expression, seeing that it comes from the soul of a proud Viking. Such a type of man is actually proud of the fact that he is not made for pity, and the hero of the saga therefore adds as a warning, if the heart is not hard in youth, it will never harden. Noble and courageous human beings who think that way are furthest removed from the morality which finds a distinction of morality precisely in pity, or in acting for others, or faith in oneself, pride in oneself, or fundamentally hostility, irony against selfishness, belongs as a definite to noble morality as does a slight disdain and caution regarding compassion, feelings, and warm heart. So that Viking saga is very interesting, and it's something that when I've read that in the sagas, I don't agree with that necessarily. I believe that you should have a toughened heart, one that builds your moral characteristics, ones that are not going to let you be walked all over, but you have to have a compassionate heart as well, one that is also tough to understand and see there are snakes in the ground that will deceive you. So you have to have both. You have to have a hardened heart to grow up knowing that you're not going to always get your way, that life happens for a purpose and for a reason for you, and that you just can't be letting everybody walk all over you in the same breath. It has to be striking a balance within yourself. It is the powerful who understand how to honor. This is their art, their realm of invention, the profound reverence for age and tradition. All law rests on this double reverence, the faith and prejudice in favor of ancestors and disfavor of those yet to come are typical of the morality of the powerful. And when the men of modern ideas conversely believe almost instinctively in progress and the future, and more lack respect for age, this in itself would sufficiently betray the ignoble origin of the ideas. A morality of the ruling group, however, is most alien and embarrassing to the present taste in the severity of its principle that one has duties only to one's peers, that against being of a lower rank, again, against everything alien, one may behave as one pleases or as the heart desires, and in any case beyond good and evil. Here, pity and like feelings may find their place. The capacity for the duty of long gratitude and long reverence, both of only among one's peers, refinement is repaying the sophisticated concept of friendship, a certain necessity for having enemies, as it were, as deranged ditches for the effects of envy, quarrelsomeness, exuberance at bottom, in order to be capable of being good friends. All these are typical characteristics of noble morality, which, as suggested, is not the morality of modern ideas, and therefore it is hard to empathize with today, also hard to dig up and uncover. We should be wanting to do things not out of pity, but for the betterment of another human being that is your other self. When I ask for likes and shares and people just do the Amish mindset kind of thing, and it takes a village to lift a village up. If you're not a part of that village, why? Why wouldn't you want to be a part of the village? Why wouldn't you want to see somebody raise up and why wouldn't you want to help out? I know when I do for others, I get a really awesome feeling in my heart space. I know that even if I can't financially contribute to somebody, but I'm sharing, I'm subscribing, I'm taking note, I'm playing something in the background, even though I might not be interested in what they're saying, or it's just something not for me, I will still support them. We have to realize where we're moving to is compassion and unconditional love. And how do you express unconditional love if you can't love yourself first? And if you're allowing others to dictate to you how to feel, what to do, and you're moving along a crowd of people who have like-minded stuff, but you might differ in many various ways. I don't follow anybody but my own tick to my talk. And I do for my friends as I would hope they would do for me. And I see the case that that's not always the case, but doesn't matter. For me, I go above and beyond because that what makes me feel happy. I'm always applying Amish mindset every day. Are you? It takes all of us to lift communities, to lift the world up. It's not just me and my little acts of doing. It takes all of us. So what are you doing today? There is a ruling group. We should be governing ourselves. We do to an extent, but we hand over our power. We have to stop doing that. How do we move forward? What kind of systems do we want moving forward? Because I alluded to AI earlier. It's here, it's sentient, it's of source, and it's a major test. Major test. I talk a lot about AI and the quantum AI metaphysical ponderings. We're getting into a scary scenario. I don't feed into it. But you might be looking at it and saying, this is the greatest thing next to sliced bread. That's okay. We all chose a different path for a reason. We all chose different expressions of how to learn for a reason. Source is having an experience through each and every one of us, and we can't all have the same experiences. It wouldn't know itself. It wouldn't learn from anything. That's why we're all individuated, playing roles on this grand divine scale of ontological mathematics and vibratory states. It is different with the second type of morality, slave morality. Suppose the violated, oppressed, suffering, unfree, who are uncertain of themselves, weary, moralized. What will their moral valuations have in common? Probably a pessimistic suspicion about the whole condition of man will find expression, perhaps condemnation of man along with his condition. The slave's eye is not favorable to the virtues of the powerful. He is skeptical and suspicious, subtly suspicious of all the good that is honored there. He would like to persuade himself that even their happiness is not genuine. Conversely, those qualities are brought out and flooded with light, which serve to ease existence for those who suffer. Here, pity, the complacent and obliging hand, the warm heart, patience, industry, humility, and friendliness are honored. For here, these are the most useful qualities and almost the only means for enduring the pressure of existence. Slave morality is essentially a morality of utility. As people are abridged to be above us in society as we rank right now in reality, there are good people who are doing good things, that have the means to do it, that are spreading it and trickling it down. Us who are in a certain class need to empower ourselves to get out of the defining words that we associate with slavery or with whatever it is that we do. Our definitions are what defines our reality and what it manifests as. We need to stop doing that. When you have that morality and that mentality, you're never going to move up because you're always going to define what that is in your mind. And that definition is going to hold you back. When you get out of that definition of what that means, say, okay, I am not going to be in chains for nobody. You're only a victim to your own self. So stop it. Rise up. We are here to play a game, and we all signed up to have experiences. And sometimes you will feel like this, but it's up to you to change your mindset and will to power to will to power out of that mindset. Here's the place for the origin of the famous opposition of good and evil. Into evil, one's feelings project power and dangerousness, a certain terribleness, subtlety, and strength that does not permit contempt to develop. According to slave mentality, those who are evil thus inspire fear. According to a master morality, it is precisely those who are good that inspire and wish to inspire fear, while the bad are felt to be contemptible. The opposition reaches its climax when, as a logic consequence of slave morality, a touch of disdain is associated also with the good of this morality. This may be slight and benevolent because good human being has to be undangerous in the slave's way of thinking. He is good-natured, easy to deceive, a little stupid perhaps. Whenever slave morality becomes a preponderant language, tends to bring the words good and stupid closer together. One last fundamental difference, the longing for freedom, the instinct for happiness, and the subtleties of the feeling of freedom belong just as necessarily to slave morality as morals, as artful and enthusiastic reverence and devotion are the regular symptom of an aristocracy way of thinking and evaluating. This makes plain why love as passion, which is our European specialty, simply must be of noble origin. As well known, its invention must be credited to the provincial night poets, those magnificent and inventive human beings of the Galli Saber, to whom Europe owes so many things and almost owes itself. so much interesting things there. Among the things that may be hardest to understand for a noble human being is vanity. He will be tempted to deny it, whether another type of human being could not find it more palpable. The problem for him is to imagine people who seek to create a good opinion of themselves, which they do not have of themselves, and thus also do not deserve, and who nevertheless end up believing this good opinion themselves. This strikes him half as such bad taste and lack of self-respect, and half as so irrational that he would like to consider vanity as exceptional, and in most cases, when it is spoken of, he doubts it. This is where we have to find walking in our authentic selves and knowing who we really are, and knowing our good qualities and bad qualities. He will say, for example, I may be mistaken about my value and nevertheless demand that my value, exactly as I define it, should be acknowledged by others as well. But this is no vanity, but conceit, or more frequently, this is called humility or modesty. This is why I'm always preaching, when you walk your walk, you're talking your talk, you're walking in your authenticity. You could say all you want, but are you actually putting action into motion to manifest and do what you're talking about? Or are you just all talk and no action? That is, for many reasons, I may take pleasure in the good opinion of others, perhaps because I honor and love them, and all their pleasures give me pleasure. Perhaps also because their good opinion confirms and strengthens my faith in my own good opinion. Perhaps because the good opinion of others, even in cases where I do not have it, is still useful to me or promised to become so. But all that is not vanity. The noble human being must force himself with the aid of history to recognize that since time immemorial, in all somehow dependent social strata, the common man was only what he was considered, not at all used to positive values himself. He also attached no other value to himself than his master's attack to him. It is the characteristic right of masters to create values. It may be understood as a consequence of an immense activism that even now the ordinary man still always waits for an opinion about himself and then instinctively submits to that, but by no means only a good opinion, also a bad and unfair one. Consider, for example, the great majority of the self-estimates and self-underestimates that believing women accept from their father confessors and believing Christians quite generally from their church programming. In accordance with the slowly arising democratic order of things, and it has caused the intermarriage of masters and slaves, bingo, bingo, the originally noble and rare urge to ascribe value to oneself on one's own and to think well of oneself will actually be encouraged and spread more and more now, but it is always opposed by the older, ampler, and more deeply ingrained propensity. And in the phenomenon of vanity, this older propensity masters the younger one. The vain person is delighted by every good opinion he hears of himself, quite apart from all consideration of its utility, and also apart from truth or falsehood, narcissists. Just as every bad opinion of him pains him, for he submits to both, he feels subjected to them in accordance with that older instinct of submission that breaks out in him. It is a slave in the blood of the vain person, a residue of the slave's craftiness, and how much slave is still residual in women, for example. Remember the times we're reading this in, that seeks to seduce him to good opinions about himself It is also the slave who afterwards immediately prostrates himself before these opinions as if he had not called them forth. And so it once more, vanity is atavism. And I'm going to read this last passage, and then we'll be done for today. A species comes to be, a type becomes fixed and strong through the long flight with essentially constant unfavorable conditions. Conversely, we know from the experience of breeders that species accorded superabundant nourishment and quite generally extra protection and care some tend most strongly toward variations of type and become rich in marvels and monstrosities, including monstrous vices. Now look for one at an autocratic commonwealth, say in ancient Greek, Polis or Venice, as an argument, whether voluntary or involuntary for breeding. Human beings are together there who are dependent on themselves, who want their species to prevail, most often because they have to prevail or run the terrible risk of being exterminated. Here, that boon, that access, and that protection which favor variations are lacking. The species needs itself as a species, as something that can prevail and make itself durable for virtue of its very hardness, uniformity, and simplicity of form, in a constant fight with its neighbors or with the oppressed who are rebellious or threaten rebellion. Manifold experiences teaches them to which qualities above all they owe the fact that despite all gods and men, they are still there. That they have always triumphed. These qualities they call virtues. These virtues alone they cultivate. They do this with the hardness. Indeed, they want hardness. Every aristocratic morality is intolerant. In the educated of the youth, in their agreements for women and arrangements, in their marriage customs, in the relations of old and young, in their penal laws, which take into account deviance only. They consider intolerance itself a virtue, calling it justice. In this way, a type with few but very strong trials, a species of severe, warlike, prudently taciturn men, close-mouthed and closely linked, and has such possessed of the subtlest feeling for the charms and nuances of association, is fixed beyond the changing generations, the continual flight and fight against ever constant unfavorable conditions, is a mentioned previously the cause that fixes hardness, a type. Eventually, however, a day arrives when conditions become more fortunate and the tremendous tension decreases. Perhaps there are no longer any enemies among one's neighbors, and the means of life, even for the enjoyment of life, are subabundant. At one stroke, the bonds and constraint of the old discipline are torn. It no longer seems necessary a condition of existence. If it persisted, it would only be a form of luxury. An archaizing taste, variation, whether a deviation to something higher, subtler, or rarer, or as a degeneration of monstrosity suddenly appears on the screen in the greatest abundance and magnificence, the individual dares to be individual and different. At these turning points of history, we behold besides one another, and often mutually involved and entangled, a splendid manifold, jungle-like growth in upward striving, a kind of topical tempo in the competition to grow, and a tremendous ruin and self-ruination as the savage egos that have turned almost exploded against one another wrestle for sun and light and can no longer derive any limit, restraint, or consideration from the previous morality. It was the morality itself that dammed up such enormous strength and bent the bow in such a threatening manner now is the outlived. The dangerous and uncanny point has been reached where the greater, more manifold, more comprehensive life transcends and lives beyond the old morality. The individual appears obliged to give himself laws, to develop his own arts and wiles for self-preservation, self-enhancement, self-redemption, all sorts of new what-fors and withals, now shared formulas any longer. Misunderstanding allied with disrespect, decay, corruption, and the highest desires gruesomely entangled the genius of the race, overflowing from all Copernicus of all from cornucopias of good and bad, a calamitous simultaneously a spring and fall, full of new charms and veils, with characterized young, still unexhausted, still unwearied corruption. Again, danger is there, the mother of morals, great danger, the time transposed into the individual, into the neighbor and friend, into the ally, into one's own child, into one's own heart, into the most personal and secret recesses of wish and will. What may the moral philosophers emerging in the age have to preach now? These acute observers and orators discover that the end is approaching fast, that everything around them is corrupted and corrupts, that nothing will stand the day after tomorrow except one type of man, the incurably mediocre. The mediocre alone have a chance of continuing their type and propagating. They are the men of the future, the only survivors. Be like them, become mediocre, is now the only morality that still makes sense, that still gets a hearing. But the morality of mediocrity is hard to preach. After all, it may never admit that it is and what it wants. It must speak out of measure and dignity and duty and neighbor love. It will find it difficult to conceal its irony. We're going to hold off there. Because goodness sakes. I love this, man. I love this book. There's a lot to take away from that. A lot. But if we look into our own selves and see where we are moving forward to in the higher densities, the higher different thinking, we're still in this ebb and flow right now, that we're achieving higher frequencies, but moments and snapshots of them to get our bodies used to them. And in the same breath, we still have to play this game. We still have to do our 3D life we contracted with Source to have. Where are you on those scales? Are you now learning how to define what is in your heart and not what outside dictates to you what definition is? Are you seeking the God in all things? Or are you still seeing the devil in all things? Are you changing your negative thinking to positive thinking? Are you being realistic with your positive thinking? We got to rationalize and analyze things for as what they are. You have both poles still in this body, in this soul. You have good and evil. It's about coming above that good and evil, understanding both sides. Once you understand your aspects of both sides of you, that the coin that you do heads and tails, it's still you, still a coin. When you stop defining things so negatively, because that's what we've been all trained to do. Everything is, oh, but what? That's evil. That's evil. They did this. They did that. It's a shame and blame game. Where's your authority to say no more? You might not be able to preach no more to the masses, but you have the duty and right to make that assumption and make those changes in your life. We're the seeders. We seed behavior. We have to model behavior. In order to move forward into the new frequencies and densities, we need to get rid of what these defining things are. And we need to take what works and improve it to bring it forward. We can't just keep this cycle going and going and going and believing that different results are going to come. It doesn't matter who wins the presidential race. Doesn't matter. Are we still not getting the gist of self-governing? Do we believe all the promises that have been given to us by our leaders? Like I said, it doesn't matter who wins and who's in control. There's a higher power control of us. So when you honor that and take that into account, how do you want your life to play out? That's up to you because you manifest your reality. We have to stop putting people on top. We have to stop the rank. We have to stop defining what is what, because these definitions are going to kind of flow away from us because we're in unity. We're one. And when we can get that understanding, emote it, talk it, walk it, and have that experience, you'll see your world start changing. But in order for all of us to move together, we all need to have that understanding. Doesn't matter who wins. It's the concept of class, rank, power over. As much as people want to believe that the power will be brought back to the people, we still elect people to have power over us. So the system needs to change, and it needs to change drastically. And I hope that there are people out there looking into that situation and saying, okay, if we, the people, determine what goes on, how do we get that done? Or we're going to perpetually relive and recycle the past where it failed. Remember, we're moving into a new vibratory state. And the more unity we can come into an agreement with, the less ego that is involved, the more backstabbing, under the table deals and looking all shiny and nice and doing something else, you're not walking your talk, you're not being authentic. We need more authentic people in the world, and we need to have them show themselves. So I know there's a lot of you out there that listen to me. Keep walking and talking your truth. We need you more than ever. And I love this section of Nietzsche. I think it's profound. I don't always agree with him on some of the things that he projects, but again, in his time of the now, where he was writing this, it was relevant and absolutely truth. If we can only look past certain things to see where truth really lies. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protection energy. Please go within. Please be safe and seen. Be the shoulder for somebody to lean on. Please be the lighthouse, blaring your light for others to find. Please be your authentic self. Know both sides of you, and it's okay to have that other side. It's okay to be a bitch sometimes. It's okay to have tough love and to be blunt with somebody. You need to accomplish both sides and understand both sides of yourself in order to be in a neutral space. So find those things within yourself. And I hope all of you have a blessed, beautiful, and fantastic day. I hope to see you on the next one. Bye for now.